guys, Chris here. Welcome back to Chandler's Bitchin' Swiss Kitchen. I've decided to take another crack at this thing because I really enjoyed it last time, and I want to create something. I don't know, it's been a while since I did something creative, and being all cooped up in my apartment all day has not been good for my sanity. So rather than go outside, and enjoy the beautiful Swiss countryside, I have opted to stay in and look inwards for some artistic opportunities. And so here I am. I'm going to make another episode, and I've always loved TV shows like Good Eats. Alton Brown made this 10 seasons of this show a couple decades ago, and it was just fantastic. It was all about cooking and science and all the history of the food that he was making. And I love the show, and I always wanted to do something as an homage to his work and to put my own personal spin on it. So I promised myself I would do something like this eventually, and I realized that if I didn't just do it, if I keep waiting for the right conditions, to have the perfect kitchen, to have a GoPro and microphones and all the best equipment that I could possibly want, I'm never going to do it. So I decided enough is enough. I'm doing an episode. I've had this meal on my mind ever since I first heard about it. And like a song you can't get out of your head, this is a recipe I can't get out of my head. So I need to make it. And I thought, what better opportunity than to videotape it and share it with you guys, and hopefully we can all learn something as we go here. Also, this whole thing is a great opportunity to practice my videography skills, editing, and a good chance to keep in touch with you guys back at home. So the dish we are making today, based on the ingredients you see before you here, is a Swiss-German classic called raclette, which is funny because raclette is clearly French, but it really originated in Germany. So it's a dish that came from Germany, rather Swiss, the German-speaking part of Switzerland, got a French name, which then became the common name in German-speaking Switzerland. All right, so enough about the history. No one's too interested. I'll get more into that in a second. So what do we have here? We got potatoes. Potatoes are interesting, obviously, because they are so good. French fries, but they're a member of the nightshade family Solanaceae, and those are interesting because nightshade, you hear that word and you think poison, and you're not wrong. Potatoes can be poisonous. If you've seen a potato that has sprouted and started to turn kind of green and it gets sort of soft, that potato is undergoing a chemical process, rather a biochemical process, where it creates these toxins called glycoalkaloids, and they can make you really sick. Obviously, it depends on how much you ingest. So if you see a really green potato, just don't risk it. Just throw it out. These ones have not started to green yet at all, but the eyes, I had to chop all the eyes out. So I'm going to get to work on these, and then I'll tell you a bit more about the dish. Ooh, fun fact, when a potato turns green, that's chlorophyll, just like you would see on the leaves of a plant. So with that fun fact out of the way, I'm going to cut these potatoes up into roughly 1.5 inch cube, and then I'm going to boil them. So while I'm at it, I'll get this water back on the heat here, fire it up, and while I'm at it, I can tell you a bit more about this dish. So raclette is a dish of melted cheese, which you pour over boiled potatoes and pickles, pickled onions. You can put it on bread. You can do meat. And really, they had me at melted cheese. I don't need to hear much else than that. I don't know about you. And the idea was that, rather, I should start with a bit more of the history. It goes back to, as I said, the German part of, the German-speaking part of Switzerland, which is generally on the east and the north of the country. Obviously, there are exceptions to this, but that's how you tell the difference. It's Italian in the south, French in the west, and then the rest is German-speaking, except for their fourth official language, which is Romansh, which is an interesting blend of all of the above. and it's only spoken by a fraction of the population. But they were kind enough to make it an official language, so there you go. The Swiss don't mess around. So the dish itself it couldn't be simpler. You boil potatoes, you mash them up a little bit, and then you put this melted cheese on them. How you melt the cheese? Well, you have a few options. Usually this is done sitting around a table with friends and family, and there are these increasingly sophisticated machines you can get these days to melt the cheese, and then you just scrape it out of these little dishes and put it on top of your potatoes. So rather than make you watch me cut the last 2 potatoes here, I'm going to show you some pictures of these devices that are available now. I'll just do these last 2 here. Oh, it's kind of nasty. And there we go. Okay, those are going. That's probably enough anyway. So I'll show you some of these devices that they've got. The simplest ones are dirt simple. You've got ones like this, where you've got little tea lights that you put under this metal frame. Then you put a little non-stick dish on top with a nice little wooden handle there. And you put your cheese in that. The cheese comes in these convenient little slices that are, I don't know, maybe a 1/4 inch thick. And so you stick a slice into your pan, you let it melt, and then you scrape it out using the handy-dandy little scraper paddle here so that you don't scratch the Teflon surface. More on that in a bit. And then you scrape it over your potatoes. It's that simple. Of course, there are more complicated versions, as the world of consumer goods guarantees. We also have Raclette for 2, very romantic evening at home. This set might even be for 4. So you plug this thing in, there's a heating element on the bottom, and then you've got a stone on top, and there's a heating element under that as well. So the cheese goes on these little spoons. They're just like the ones we just saw, except that you cook the cheese underneath, and then this hot stone up here heats up, and you can grill meats and vegetables and stuff on top too, and then mix it all up with your cheese. Everybody loves it. The original design, or one that you will see in restaurants sometimes, is this guy here, which is pretty impressive when you look at it. The base here is this complex rotating assembly where you put 2 full wheels of cheese in it, and then rotate them so that they're under this overhanging part here, which contains a resistive heating element. And you leave the cheese under there until it has melted and liquefied. And then you use this neat little tilting mechanism. So you rotate the whole thing out from under the heat, and then you scrape the cheese off onto your potatoes. And then obviously you drink wine. I don't have any wine because I'm off the stuff right now. We can talk about that another time. Anyway. So you'll see complex devices such as this. Oh, by the way, the name raclette comes from the French verb racler, which literally means to scrape off. So what would happen is these Swiss dairy farmers, when they're moving their cows between the flatland and the mountainside pastures, they'd have to travel quite a distance. So for food, they would bring a wheel of cheese with them. It's at this point in the story that I stopped believing it, but anyway. So they take the wheel of cheese, they crack it open just like this, and they leave it next to their fire at night. And then after the cheese is melted, they would racle it off of the top and put it onto bread or whatever else they had. Yeah, I don't believe it either. But anyway, it makes a good story. They've also got ones like this where you've got a griddle on top, and that would be reversible. You could get a flat side on the top instead of the grill lines. But the same thing sort of applies. You melt the cheese, you scrape the cheese, you eat the cheese. Everybody's happy. Now, obviously, this is a consumer good, and anything that one company can make, another company can make even more ridiculous. So I'll show you this here, the samurai pagoda monstrosity. I mean, look at this. They're trying to cook shrimp on its side. Like, this has clearly been painted. I mean, thanks a lot, marketing. It's a great concept, but it's not terribly reasonable. What else do we have? Okay, so we saw you already. There's another one here. It's hilarious. This thing, it's got a friggin' fondue pot on it as well. It's got enough raclette sets for, looks like 10 people, grill space for everything, and then a full pot of fondue, as if one kind of melted cheese isn't enough. You can have two. Anyway, there's no accounting for taste. So those are all the different kinds you can see. I'm sure the ones that you see in restaurants are even more different, but those are just some of the options. So our potatoes are finally boiling here. I'm going to let these go for 20 minutes. I'm not going to bore you with any more blah blah. Oh wait, yes I am, because we haven't talked about the cheese yet. The cheese is extremely important. Raclette, that's what the cheese is called as well. I'll show you the packaging here. So raclette, and you see they advertise a little melty thing. They tell you exactly what to do right there on it. It is a semi-hard cow's milk cheese, nice and bendy. Reminds me of mozzarella, only in the texture. The smell, it's funky. It's like introductory funky. Once you get to Switzerland, something you notice is that there is a wide spectrum of funkiness available. Now I hope we don't get steamed out here. Come on, potatoes. Everybody loves you, but enough is enough. Turn those down for a second. Shut up. Anyway, the cheese is good. There's this region here in Switzerland called Appenzell, and they make the funkiest of mountain cheeses, or Bergkäse, and you can use those for this too, but this stuff, it's good, it's soft, it melts extremely well. It comes, you can sort of see that they would have cut this from a ring, or from a round maybe this big, and there's a bit of the rind around the outside. It's excellent. It's really, really good. I've used it for cheese sauces, omelets, grilled cheese, and I'm going to use it for this from now on. Also, you have the option to slice up onions nice and thin and put them in with the cheese when you melt it, which I haven't fully explained yet, have I? Anyway, as long as you use a melting cheese, you can make this with anything you have. You can use Gruyere, which is available in North America if you want to try this yourself. You can also use Emmental, widely available, and then that Appenzeller that I mentioned. The Italians, actually, they make a similar dish, and they use Fontina, which has melting right in the name, which tells you how good it is. What else we got here? So how am I going to melt this cheese? All right, I'm glad you asked. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my broiler. I'm going to put the pan right underneath it. Which pan? This pan. This is my slightly well-loved non-stick Teflon frying pan that the hotel management was so kind to give me after I complained that my room contained no cookware. This thing is from IKEA. IKEA, because nobody makes better cookware than the Chinese. Anyway, the point I wanted to make was you want something non-stick because you're dealing with melted cheese here. So this pan has seen better days. I've really been cooking up a storm here, trying out local recipes and just getting ideas. And the Teflon is starting to scrape out. I'm probably poisoning myself every time I use this pan, but I can't quit now. I'm too far in. So the fun thing about Teflon, Teflon's actually a trademarked name, all rights reserved, the DuPont chemical, blah, blah, blah. The real chemical name is PTFE, or polytetrafluoroethylene, which is a mouthful, but the Teflon, Teflon, anyway, it was an accidental discovery. In 1938, one of these employees for DuPont, he was doing an experiment, and he was rapidly condensing a gas and releasing it from a cylinder. And when the weight of that cylinder didn't match what he was expecting it to, he cut it open to find out where all that extra weight went, and he found the inside of the cylinder had been coated with this white waxy substance, which was extremely slippery. So, of course, what do? They go and use it on the Manhattan Project, on the nukes. They used it to lubricate important joints and some fasteners and stuff. It wasn't until 1954 that a Frenchman, of all people, trust the French, right? Applied it to cookware. His wife was complaining, as I've heard they do, that her food was sticking to the pan, which I bet was a common complaint back then because these things didn't exist yet. And so he, in what I would call a questionable move in materials engineering history, applied a chemical from his workplace to his wife's cookware. Courage. There's not a lot of courage like that anymore. But to this lady's credit, women in engineering, you've got a strong and proud tradition here. She had the right idea. She knew her husband was working on something, and she wanted a piece of it for herself. So you go, girl. Anyway, the interesting thing about Teflon, and people are getting a little freaked out about it these days, is that it breaks down, it chips away, and then you end up eating it. And some people are worried about that. I remember having a conversation, I think it was with Jeff last year, where you should throw out your Teflon pans as soon as they start to break down, not after they're no longer non-stick, because it means that the Teflon is in you now. And this is not a naturally occurring chemical, so you can only imagine what good it is doing to your insides. Anyway, I'm going to cook on this today because I want some melted cheese and potatoes, so live your life. Don't be afraid. The other interesting thing about Teflon that can kill you is that between 260 and 350 degrees Celsius, it chemically begins to break down. Now, fortunately, those temperatures are pretty high, not common in domestic kitchens, although achievable. So once your cookware hits 260 Celsius, remember, we're in the European economic area here, so everything's in Celsius. Once you hit that temperature, things start to degrade, the chemical starts to break down a little bit, but once you're at 350, you're on full speed degradation. You're getting dangerous fumes into the air. If you have parrots or budgies or other small birds, perhaps children, the gases can be quite harmful. So don't let your Teflon pans get too hot. Also, in adults, perfectly healthy, otherwise healthy adults, these fumes can cause, I forget what it's, polymer fume syndrome, which is very similar to the flu, symptom-wise, except you did it to yourself. So don't do it. Anyway, this thing's getting steamy, and there's still some more time before those potatoes are ready to go. And I'm not going to melt the cheese until the last moment. So I'm going to quickly show you the knives that I'm using so that I can one day score some sweet sponsorship from the good people at Victorinox and Fiskars. Fiskars, the kitchen knife choice of ninjas or people who were in Tron Legacy? I don't know. Say what you like. That racing stripe is pretty sharp. Anyway, I'll be back. Jesus, my left hand is shaking like a leaf here. I must be hungry. If these shaking potatoes are done, move on. Oh yeah, they're done. Man, stop shaking. Oh, did I have too many coffees? Jesus, I gotta sit down. So, the potatoes have been boiling for roughly 20 minutes. Might have been a bit overkill. We'll just do the quick knife insert test. And if a quick shake will release, those are good to go. Those are gonna mash up beautifully. So what we do next is we are going to consider our cheesage. So I'm gonna kill the heat on you. I'm gonna drain those in a minute. Turn off this fan because as calming as white noise can be, it is not meant for this video. Okay, so there you can see the oven's all prepped. It's always good to put a liner down whenever you're doing anything involving melted cheese. I'm going to fire this thing on to full chooch, which is a new term I've learned recently from one of my new favorite YouTube channels. I will link to it. Okay, so we're going full power, and we're using this setting here, which shows the broiler. I don't need this next one here, which would also throw on the convection fan. Totally unnecessary, but obviously 2 lines is better than 1, so I'm going with this guy here. So we're going to let that fire up, and then it's cheesy melty time. In the meantime, okay, it's just about party time. My potatoes are nice and fork tender here. They're easily mashed. That's what I'm looking for. And it's time to melt some cheese. Now, I've realized there's a slight flaw in my plan. The cheese, I mean, it's no problem. I've got my pan here. I'm just going to put the cheese around the front edge. I want to expose the surface area as much as I can, but I really want it along the front edge of the pan so that I can just put the part of the pan under the broiler that I care about. And then the rest I can keep outside so the handle doesn't get too hot, because it is metal too. And I don't have any proper oven mitts. All I got are these old crappy rags that the house cleaning ladies seem to leave behind. So I'm going to hope that the heat does not transmit through the handle and into my hand, because if it does, I'm screwed. There is no alternative. I need to get the pan out of the oven. I suppose I could come up with a solution in time, but I want this now, and the little light is off, so it's time to melt some freaking cheese. Before we do that, though, we are going to need an implement of cheese removal. Perhaps a scoopy thing? Scoopy thing. All right. Spoon? Spoon. All right. Here goes nothing. Oh yeah. Nothing like running the broiler on a hot spring day. Ookie dookie, in she goes. Oh, something's sizzling already. I don't know what it is. Not all that concerned. Okay, so we got a little gap here. Broilers are funny things. You need to catch them when they're on the on cycle to really get a good sear out of them. If you're doing meat or fish or something like that, they cycle on and off, because if they didn't, the elements would they would cook themselves. They would twist and contort, and it's a good way to ruin an oven. But of course, there are probably fuses and stuff like that prevent any such damage. But anyway, if you really want to brown something, you need to get it under the heat while the broiler is actually on. So leaving the oven door open, as it is here, is actually a good way to keep it on, because when the thermostat of the oven hits a certain temperature, it'll turn off the elements, and they will protect themselves, as I previously mentioned. I'm going to do a quick heat check on the handle here, because the heat isn't just under the broiler. It's also coming out of the oven, and that's going to heat up this handle. So far, so good, but who knows? All right, cheese beginning to melt, but going kind of slow. All right, stay tuned. Oh, we have bubblage. Steady. There's nowhere I can rest my elbow right now. Everything is hot. Okay, I think we're almost there. They say you don't cook it until you see color. You just cook it until it's, what do we call that? That looks like the molten lava stage to me. The don't spill it on your lap stage, if you will. Oh yeah. That's coming out. Okay. God help me. Quick test. Quick test. Awesome. Okay. Oh, this is going to be a challenge. All right. Phone goes back on its precarious perch. Oh no, I have to rotate the camera. 1 second. Okay, we're back. Not much more than a second has passed. I'm gonna close the oven so I don't steam myself to death. Oh, look at this. All right, scoopy thing. Spoon thing. Spoon thing. All right, everybody together. We're gonna shower as a family. This is working incredibly well. I was afraid it was all gonna stick to the pan. You know, it smells a lot like fondue right now, which I suppose makes sense. It is a Swiss cheese. Oh, dear gods. I'm a little worried. Mostly happy, but a little worried. Oh my god, the smell is overwhelming. Okay, while I test this, I'm gonna get a couple more bricks under the heat, and this time I'm adding onions because I'm a bachelor. Ugh. There aren't many benefits, but there are some. All right, handle still not too hot, and she goes. Is that under the oven? Yeah, it is. Okay. All right. Well. Okay. It looks like some of the cheese is beginning to crisp on the bottom, but that's good. That's all to the good for me. That stuff at the bottom of the fondue pot. Oh my God. Ugh. Cheese madness. Okay, if there's no sound for the next couple seconds, you know why. Whew. All right. Yep. That's going on the list. I gotta get this made professionally. Getting weak in the knees here. Is my hand done shaking? Solid as a rock. Quicker than expected, the onion-filled batch is ready to go. So time to get her off the heat. And the handle is still mostly touchable by hand. Nope, no it is not. Okay, well, now this became an emergency. Okay. Stay calm, old man. Just a little bit of heat. Never hurt anyone. Okay, easy. Okay, so the cheese at the top, predictably burned, so we'll clear the exit ramp before we move forward here. Get that out. Okay. Everybody out of the pool. Okay, so the first dose of cheese has laid an unfortunate foundation for the second dose, but it's still working. It's still melted cheese with onions in it. I'm sure everything is going to be just fine. Get out of there. Come on. Sous chef. Now this stuff, that's going to be good later. Nothing like a toasted Teflon flavored raclette scraping party after you've already eaten 3 persons worth of potatoes and melted cheese. Ugh, God help me. Well, there you have it, folks. I never said it was going to be pretty, but I always knew it was going to be tasty. How could it not be? Yeah, when they're coming up with these dishes, they probably just take whatever they have kicking around, melt some of it, pour it on top of something else, and then just stuff it down their faces. I mean, if this came from the 1200s like the stupid Wikipedia article says it does, they weren't exactly picky about food back then, right? I mean, food itself was the luxury, not the recipe. Oh, man. I'm just going to giggle to myself here for a little while. Excuse me. Hate to eat this in front of you. I really do. A, because half of you probably think it's disgusting. And B, because I feel guilty because I'm not sharing. Yeah, I'm going to go be alone with this. And I hope you guys will join me next time. I had a lot of fun making this. I'm sure the editing will be a nightmare, but I think it came together pretty well. Let me know what you think in the comments, if you have any recommendations or questions or any of that garbage. Or if you represent the Fiskars or Victorinox companies and you're interested in offering me a sponsorship deal, please get in touch. Oh, God. Okay, bye.